Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Beware the Board, a horror podcast where we watch a randomly selected horror movie every single week. I'm Bob.
I'm Ben.
Hey, Ben.
What's up?
Okay. I was kind of expecting you to be a little more excited or whatever. You know, last fucking movie of the season, baby. Let's go. Okay, bro.
Was that good energy? I think that was good energy.
Shut the fuck up. Good lord. You were like, made me save this movie for like the last spot of the season because like apparently it's like
I
real.
didn't make you do shit. We just maybe discussed things.
Maybe you plead and begged me to do so.
No.
No. So you're not excited at all for this one?
I mean, I guess I'm excited. It's an okay movie.
I expected you to be more hype.
We'll get to watch Cannibals, so, you know,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Well, that's the one that I'm worried about, which reminds me, I should have brought the trash can in here.
It's fine. We cut before we actually watched the movie.
No, I know, but I should have done it so I didn't do it later. I could always just throw up on my floor, I guess.
Yeah.
Gross. Well, you got anything you want to talk about before we get to the podcast part of the podcast?
Not exactly exciting news for you, but there was a new Spider movie on Shudder that just got
Ew.
released. I believe it's called Infested.
Yeah, I think I talked about that a while ago on the podcast.
Well, it's out now.
Gross.
And yeah,
I'm sure it's a fine movie, but gross.
spiders.
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 That's one of the categories that we pitched when we started the show.
It's one of the categories we did when we started the show.
That's what I'm saying. It's one of the ones that we did and we pitched. And I was like, that one probably won't be that bad.
It wasn't that bad.
Arachnophobia still like messes me up a little bit. Just that one. Like the other two, well, Itsy Bitsy was gross, but like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, you just.
I was kind of hoping you would get over my fear of spiders. Like it would help me. It didn't help at all.
Yeah, you just love those thrillometies.
Shut up. Every time I bring up that film, you love to use that fucking line.
Yeah.
It's like the whole like hallucination thing or something. Like it's you have bits that you bring back.
I don't know what you're talking about, Bob. You're probably just having a hallucination right now.
You fucking. Have you been seeing those memes on Twitter where it's like, you wouldn't survive a week in the asylum I was raised in? That's me in this podcast. Except the asylum is purely you. You drive me fucking nuts sometimes in the show.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm perfectly pleasant.
Now you're
All the time.
gaslamping me right now.
I believe it's gaslighting.
No, see, now you're trying to gaslamp me even harder. It's gaslamping.
That's okay, Bob.
What are you talking about?
One
That's
day
okay.
you'll learn proper English.
I'm being gaslamped.
Gaslit would be,
Nope.
I believe.
Nope. See, now you're fucking with me again.
Proper, right? Because gaslight and then lit, is that past tense? Yeah.
I don't know, man.
For
You're the
light?
English major. Why are you asking me?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, anyway. I don't know how much stuff I have to talk about because I didn't really write anything down, but I did see this thing that was interesting. Mostly because we talked about it a while ago, but I didn't know. Let me preface this. We watched The Invisible Man. That wasn't last season, was it? 2 seasons ago? Season...
No, I think that was last season.
Was it last season?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Because it was under Universal, right?
No, it wasn't. It was under Precode.
Oh, then it was the season before last.
So 2 seasons ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Time runs together now. And then there was the Invisible Man remake in 2018 or whatever, when they were like pitching the whole like dark universe thing
Yeah.
for the Universal Monsters, which I still think is a cool idea, a cool concept. But that's been scrapped at this point, I think.
But yeah, cool concept. Horrible execution.
Yeah. What was it? The Mummy 2019 or whatever? That movie sucks.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay. The Invisible Man 2 is maybe happening, but it's a remake of the one from 2018. So it's like, it's in talks, but there's nothing official yet. But it would be really cool to see because maybe they could restart the Dark Universe. Maybe this could be a jumping off point.
I don't know if that version of the Invisible Man is necessarily the one I'd want for the Dark Universe, though.
You don't think so?
Probably not. It's a good movie, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But if they were going for that vibe, that's not necessarily the interpretation I'd take.
Interesting. I just thought I'd bring this one up because we've seen the original. We haven't seen the 2018 one, but eventually we'll get to it. I just think this is cool because it could lead to them rethinking the Dark Universe and like sort of restarting again and like maybe giving it a go, because I think that's something that could really be good.
I mean, I think they'll try again eventually, but I think they'll just be more successful if they're just like, why don't we just make Universal monster movies again and not try to interconnect them? Because everyone's tired of that trope.
Yeah, no, I mean, I understand. It's one of those things where it's like,
Disney milked it till it died.
yeah, you're not wrong, man. But I just really,
They can just make the movies and not have them be like interconnected like that. You can still have crossovers and not have an interconnected universe.
that's fair. We haven't seen all the original Universal monster films, so we've seen a handful, and I like them, and I would love to see modern takes on them
Well, yeah,
that are not ass.
that you'll have a better chance of that if they're not a part of the dark universe.
I guess that's fair.
Because interconnected universes are a cheap trick to leave open-ended questions in your movie.
Okay. I think that was the only thing I wanted to talk about, because there was nothing else really interesting this week that I saw.
Okay. Well then, are you ready for the last cannibal spot?
No, I'm not ready, Ben.
All right. Well then, I guess we'll do something else.
Oh. You have something else?
No, but if you're not ready, I guess I'll find
If you're not ready, we'll figure something
We'll
out.
figure something out.
I thought maybe you had a backup
I guess we
plan.
can do the wrap up now and then come back to it.
Yes, because that makes sense.
It makes sense. Kinda.
Okay, Ben. What do I have? What's the last movie of the season? What do I have left?
You just have a cannibal spot.
No, I know, but what is
so
it?
you're gonna choose that one.
Yeah.
And we're watching Cannibal Holocaust again.
No, we're not. Shut your fucking mouth. Ben, I think... Okay, here's my thing. I would be upset, but I wouldn't be upset because of the movie. I would be upset because I don't want to sit through that... I don't want to sit through that long of a movie again.
We're just watching a different cut of it.
I'd lose my mind. A censored cut. 95% of the film is missing.
The uncensored cut.
That means the original cut we watched was censored. No.
I think there is a director's cut of Cannibal Holocaust.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's probably way worse.
Well, I'm not sure what we watched. So.
I'm not either.
Anyways, we're watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974.
Are we really?
Yeah.
Holy shit. That's not what I expected in the spot.
What did you expect?
I don't know.
I thought you knew what was in the spot.
Yeah, I did.
What did you think it was?
I don't know. Well, I thought it was, what is that movie with like the lotion in the skin or whatever? Isn't that a cannibal movie? Silence of the Lambs.
There you go. And that the lotion in the skin?
Or whatever. Isn't that like a quote from that film or something?
Vaguely you were kind of poking around a quote.
Well, you understood what I was going for, so it worked. You got it right.
I knew what you were talking about because I think we've talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it on an episode, but we've definitely talked about it off an episode where I'm like, yeah, Silence of the Lambs is not going on cannibals.
Have we done that?
Yeah.
I'm forgetful. I'm like a goldfish. I just like forget things because as soon as it's like object permanence, except it's everything. So it's like as soon as I stop hearing it or seeing it, it disappears from my name.
You're like a 1-year-old.
Yeah. Holy shit. I can't believe we're watching this right now. This is crazy.
I mean, what else were we going to watch?
I don't know, Ben.
The Silence of the Lambs?
Maybe.
No.
God, don't judge me so hard, bro. Also, there's like tons of other cannibal films that we could watch. So I didn't.
Yeah, but not as famous as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
True. Actually, maybe I should go get that trash can for real. This one, I've heard this one's gross.
Nah, it's not bad.
Okay.
Anyways, description: Texas chainsaws and massacres. What else could you want?
Okay.
It's an hour and 23 minutes long.
Surprisingly short.
It's rated R.
Thank God.
IMDb gave it a 7.4 out of 10.
That's pretty good.
Tomato Meter gave it an 89% and an audience score of 82%.
Hell yeah.
It's got 3 wins and 2 nominations. Notable actors: Marilyn Burns as Sally. She played Linda Kasabian from Helter Skelter. She was on 2 episodes in 1976. Alan Danziger as Jerry. Played Alan in Eggshells. Paul A. Partain as Franklin. Played Cal Mathers in Race with the Devil. William Vale as Kirk. Implosion Man in Poltergeist.
What? Implosion Man in Poltergeist? Okay, you fucker.
I don't know.
You know how much I want to watch Poltergeist. I've been talking about that for a long time.
Well, you can tide yourself over with Poultrygeist.
Oh, that movie is atrocious.
Yes, it is.
We should watch that for the podcast.
It's very inappropriate, too.
Oh, so just gross.
Terry McMinn as Pam played Woman with Pick in Butcher Boys. Edwin Neal as Hitchhiker played Splatter in Future Kill. Jim Sidow as Old Man. He was an actor in Hotwire. Gunnar Hansen as Leatherface played Ralph in Campfire Tales. John Dugan as Grandfather played Mr. Macabre in The Macabre. Robert Gordon as Window Washer. William Creamer as Bearded Man.
Nice.
He was a conductor in Lead Belly. John Henry Falk as Storyteller played Walter Starr in All the Way Home. Jerry Green as Cowboy played the German colonel in Mission to Death. I'm assuming this is Ed Gwynn, but it could be Geen.
Oh, no.
Guinn.
Okay.
As a cattle truck driver, he played the man around corner in Butcher Boys. Joe Bill Hogan as Drunk. Perry Lorez as pickup driver. Was a senator in Butcher Boys. And then finally, John Loquette as the narrator. He's a little famous. He was Maltz in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock,
Okay.
1984. And then for stuff that you might know, he's done some television stuff.
Okay.
He was Jenkins and Galahad from The Librarians.
Never saw
On
that.
41 episodes between 2014 and 2018. He was on a couple different long-running shows, but that was my best guess for stuff Bob might know
Okay.
because it's newer. All right, directors. Toby Hooper.
I've heard the name.
Have you?
Yes. For this film specifically.
Oh, for this?
Yeah.
Do you know anything else he's directed?
No, I have no idea.
Yeah, he's generally kind of he's famous for this movie,
Mm-hmm.
but he never really took off and became famous,
Really?
which is kind of shocking, especially because this film did really well.
Yeah.
And then another film he did a couple years later, in 1982, also did really well.
What was the other one?
Poltergeist.
Oh, he directed Poltergeist.
Yeah.
That's crazy that he's not mega. Both of these films are super mega famous in my
Mhm.
opinion.
This one kind of makes sense because 1974, it was considered pretty gross and violent, and horror in the 70s was not necessarily well respected. But there's some confusion with Poltergeist where so the producer for Poltergeist, I think it's executive producer, is Spielberg.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
And Spielberg was on set a lot. And there was basically a lot of rumors going around that Spielberg shot a lot of the film.
Oh, really?
Directed a lot of the film. But both Hooper and Spielberg have come out and been like, no.
Interesting.
But I most people associate Poltergeist as being directed by Spielberg, generally.
That's very strange.
Yeah. Writer, Kim Henkel. He wrote Last Night at the Alamo. And he has a screenplay and story credit for this film. And then the other writer is Toby Hooper. He also wrote The Mangler.
The Mangler.
The Mangler.
Oh,
and
God.
Hooper has a screenplay credit. Budget's estimated at around $140,000.
That's a lot of money for 74.
Yeah. Which, that's pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, considering there was stuff coming out 10 years later with 300,000 and that was a lot. 140 is a pretty good chunk for 74.
Yeah, and that's kind of the top estimates for money. I've also seen as low as 80,000.
Damn.
But both of those are pretty good. I think if we adjust for inflation, I read somewhere that's $900,000.
Almost $1 million.
Pretty decent. But you do have to remember, that's not a lot of money for a film that's made in the 70s.
True.
Because camera equipment was much more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to pay for film. Now, I think this was shot on, I want to say 16 millimeter. So it would have been cheaper, assumedly, than 32, which was standard. But they were renting all their camera equipment. So they were really having to push
Holy
the
shit.
budget on this film.
Yeah.
Tagline. Who will survive and what will be left of them?
Oh, no, that goes kind of hard.
Pretty great.
I do like that one.
All right, so before we get into facts, I just want to come out of here and say this, that, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right, is super influential,
Mm-hmm.
right? Honestly, it's sometimes credited with, inspiring a bunch of different common elements in slasher films
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of the first slasher movie.
Yeah.
I think it beats out Black Christmas.
What do you say, 1974?
Yeah.
I think Black Christmas was either right after or right
Black
before
Christmas
this.
is 1974 as well, but I think this one came out a couple months earlier because Black Christmas is December 20th, 1974. And the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is October,
Oh, so like right before.
Yeah.
Like 3 months.
I believe.
2 months, I guess.
Is it October? Or was that? Yeah, October 11th. So yeah, it inspired a lot of stuff. Now, obviously, Black Christmas was already in production,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, early in the genre. But if we're talking about like things it actually inspired, I mean, power tools,
Yeah.
chainsaws, obviously, characterization of like killers as giant, really strong, mask-wearing dudes,
Mm-hmm.
Leatherface. I mean, that's where we get
Michael Myers,
Mikey,
Jason.
and then you know, killing victims. It's just a trope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll watch the movie and we'll discuss it more as we get to it. But suffice it to say, this film's really famous, especially in the horror community. So
Mhm.
it's really, really, really well documented. So I'm not going to touch on too many in-depth things with facts here, because you can just basically look up everything you want about this film. With that being said, I'll just do a brief rundown of some of the things I think you should know before we get into the film. First of all, if you're not aware, Leatherface is based on Ed Gein, or at least somewhat inspired by Ed Gein. You familiar with who that is?
Vaguely.
He's kind of a very famous, I guess, serial killer would be the word. But he very famously, like, he dug up a bunch of women.
Ooh.
I think he killed a couple, but, like, mutilating corpses was kind of what he was famous for.
Okay.
And he had, I want to say, he had some mental illness. It might have been schizophrenia, but long story short, his mental state got progressively worse
Yeah.
as he went along. And so his behavior got more and more radical.
Mm.
It's actually why he got caught. He wasn't really all there at the end. But when people went into his house, there was like human skin and bone furniture and like apparently human body parts cooking.
Holy
that.
shit.
Ed Gein allegedly made he tried to make a woman suit of some sort. I believe the description I've read in the past, and it's been a while since I've looked at Ed Gein stuff, is that he wanted to make a suit of his mother so that he could feel what it was like to crawl inside of her skin.
Ugh.
And actually, a lot of kind of stuff where you'll see someone who's like a killer and they're dressing up with literally like women's skin on is a reference to Ed Gein.
Oh.
Although that always has the unfortunate association between, you know, trans representation as serial murderers in
Interesting.
horror, which is unfortunate. But yeah, that's where a lot of like the cannibalism stuff kind of comes from in this
Gross.
film. Because, you know, what's the scariest thing? Real life.
I really thought you were about to say women. And I was like, Ben, you shouldn't say that.
Well, no, Ed Gein was a man.
Ed Gein was a man.
Yeah.
And he ate people. And that's fucked
I
up.
think he ate people. I'm not.
Assumingly he ate people. He's not just going to cook human flesh for fun. Well, actually, hold on.
I don't know.
He's a bit of a
I
madman.
actually don't-
Maybe he would.
Remember if he ate people or not.
Okay. Assumedly, if you're digging up that many bodies, you gotta have a little nibble sometimes.
I don't know. He was doing some weird stuff with corpses. I think is kind of the note here. Anyways, the other big thing I want to note, and again, you can always look up a bunch of stuff on how production went with this film,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of the big thing to note is they didn't have a lot of money, like I said. They were spending it a lot on renting and stuff, and then they would had to, one of the things we don't think about is take the film once they were done recording and actually like
Get it developed.
get it developed and produced. So, you know, filmmaking back in the day was very, very expensive. So they were trying to stretch out how much time they could spend filming because they wanted to get everything done as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So part of this meant filming this movie was absolutely horrible. So if you didn't know, primary filming took place at a 1900s farmhouse located on Quick Hill Road near Round Rock, Texas.
Oh, okay.
So this was shot in Texas. It's arguably probably one of the most influential movies to come from Texas.
Interesting.
A very notable Texas horror movie reviewer is very into this film for some reason.
Oh, that makes sense.
But they were filming like 7 days a week
Ugh.
for at least 16-hour days.
Holy shit.
There's some debatable stories about some days going like 24 to 28 hours long for some of the notable shoots. But this was Texas, and I forget what time of year it was. I think it was definitely when it was sunny, so it might have been the late summer, early spring. But conditions would oftentimes get up to like 110 degrees.
Fuck that.
And they would sometimes film inside this house that wasn't ventilated because it was from like the 1900s. So it would get up to like 120 and stuff.
God damn.
And, it was gross.
Yeah.
Very notably, Hansen, so Leatherface's actor, has talked about how they only had one Leatherface costume because they couldn't afford more.
Ew.
So for like the month they were filming, the crew would wash it because they didn't want it to get lost. But he was basically stuck in that mask for like 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week.
That's gotta be so disgusting and uncomfortable in that kind of heat.
Oh yeah,
Like that rubber mask with just like, ugh.
Everything's disgusting.
Just the thought of my sweaty, gross skin touching that fucking hot ass rubber mask.
Oh, and it's gonna combine with all the dirt and
it's
everything
gonna like
too.
stick and like, gross.
And there was a bunch of gross stuff because of the heat. Like if they ever had meat on set,
Ugh. I'm sure they did.
It cooked because it was so hot.
It cooked?
Yeah, because it was 120 degrees inside. It would slowly cook, and then it would go rancid.
Oh, no, you just, you put it in there and go, this is for the scene, but also for lunch later?
No. But, stuff would go rancid on set, so there's also stories of people, like, vomiting from stuff like that.
Ew!
Yeah, so not great conditions to film under.
Oh, could you imagine wearing the Leatherface mask and throwing up and just, vomit coming out of all the holes?
You just take the mask off, Bob. Just take it off. Outside of that, there were some other unsafe conditions besides, the heat. I heard somewhere that they used some real blood for certain scenes.
Whoa, whose blood do they have?
Just like animal blood and stuff.
Oh, okay.
For the most part.
Whoa.
Just because it was too hot sometimes for some of the fake blood to work the way they wanted it to.
Oh, it was probably too thin because it was too hot.
Or thicken up and cook. Stuff like that.
Cook. Our blood's evaporating.
They also used real tools and chainsaws.
Ooh, real chainsaws.
Yeah.
That's a bit crazy.
With the blades. So
they didn't even take the blade off?
If you get 3 inches away from someone, it's
even if you take the blade off, it still looks very scary.
Don't move or you'll get eviscerated.
I'm just saying.
Real tools like hammers and stuff too.
Well, hammers is fine.
So people could get injured.
Actually murdered?
I think Hooper mentioned that everyone at least got injured once.
Motherfucker. This film seems dangerous.
So like I said, you can go look up specifics for production and stuff. There's a lot of stuff you can find on it. It's all pretty interesting. But with that being said, I think the only last note I can make about this movie before we get into it, because you can actually look out for it if you want. There's not a lot of gore in this film.
Really?
Yes. There's none.
What?
It's all implied.
No way.
And they use great editing to make you think it's there. But this is a very
make me think it's there.
This is a very goreless film. I read that Hooper was trying to get a PG rating, so he didn't put a lot of it in there.
No way, really?
And they got an R rating, assumedly for
language,
tense situations, and stuff like that.
Violence, even implied.
Implied violence, but yeah, there's famously nothing.
That is insane.
Famously nothing. There's a couple scenes, and we'll talk about them either after, and I might mention them to you during the movie, where it's people swear there's violence, something gory shown there. It's nope. Your brain just makes you think so.
What?
So yeah, that'll be cool.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you guys in a minute. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We just finished watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. What'd you think, Bob?
I liked it.
Okay. But
there's no but.
Oh, you sounded like you were gonna put a button.
I liked it. I thought it was fun.
Okay. All right.
I thought about throwing a butt in there, but I was like, nah.
Sure. I guess I'll go into a brief rundown, and then we'll go talk about the movie.
Sure.
As always, we recommend you go watch the movie unspoiled.
For sure.
But
it's kind of hard with this one, but you know.
Yeah, it's uber famous, and also objectively, not a lot happens.
that was gonna be my butt.
With that being said, the rundown is kind of interesting, or at least the setup for this film, because I think not a lot of people are necessarily familiar with what the setup of this movie is.
Well, because for a lot of people, I feel like the cultural learning about this film has nothing to do with this setup. It's everything else.
No, everyone knows the zeitgeist behind it. You know Leatherface, you know chainsaws. You're familiar with the back end of this film, but no one really knows the setup. But the setup's kind of cool. Essentially, there has been a series of grave robbings in this small, Texas area. And, bodies have been found missing, but also, parts have been missing from them.
Yeah.
And then very recently, and it's actually how the film starts, is there's a picture of a body that's been obviously illegally exhumed, but then, set up on, I think, a grave as, a rotting, macabre statue. And so Sally, one of the main characters, her grandfather is buried in the cemetery where people have started to go missing. So she's taken her brother Franklin, and then a bunch of their friends to basically go check the body's still there, or if it's been exhumed again illegally. All right, I guess I should say stolen.
Stolen is a good word.
And obviously, while they're driving through the backwoods of Texas, they stumble upon a Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Stumble's a good word.
Yeah. But that is the premise. So if that sounds cool, I'd highly recommend it. It's only an hour and 20 minutes long.
True. And it feels a lot longer than it actually is.
But it is objectively really short. It's a pretty short and sweet film. So it is definitely worth a watch if you haven't seen it. With that being said, we're going to get into it. So I think the first thing I want to talk about right off the bat, because I did mention it in the pre-movie section, is about the violence in this film. So did you kind of pick up on what I was talking about?
Yeah, I did.
So,
but I feel like you were overselling it a little bit.
I was, because better to oversell it and have you be surprised. But like I said, what this film does is it very explicitly doesn't like to show a lot of gore, especially when you compare it to later films.
Oh, yeah.
In this franchise. Or just later films in general.
Yeah, later slashes in general. That's what
this film is surprisingly goreless, especially when compared to something like Friday the 13th, which is kind of shocking. And they get away with it primarily through, when they cut someone, they'll just blood start the pool, which if you don't know how props work, they usually have a blood hose going down the back of the knife or whatever, and they'll just pump it. So when they cut people, you don't actually see any cuts. You just see blood appearing.
Sometimes.
And then most of the rest of the, violence is someone getting hit with something or someone getting impaled or chainsawed. And all of that happens, and there's a quick cut. So you don't actually see the wound. You see the blood afterwards.
And, it's framed a certain way to where you can't see it.
Yeah, there's a lot of implication. But did you think that worked for you?
Yeah, I think it made a lot of the things that happened in this film way more brutal.
Yeah, it feels really brutal.
Because it feels way worse. Because it's the classic horror thing of, the unknown is scary, and the fact that you're not seeing how bad these wounds are getting makes the possibilities so much worse.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the brain is willing to make up a lot of stuff if you imply things correctly. And I think the film really leaned into that in a way that was very effective. I mean, I think the most famous one is, and I'll mention it here because, again, I'm going to be pretty loosey-goosey with spoilers because
this film's old and mega famous.
This film's old, mega famous. You can basically find stuff for it anywhere. So sorry if you haven't seen it, but we gave you a warning. But one of the more brutal sequences that lots of people, I think at least culturally know, is when, I believe her name's Pam?
Oh, yeah.
Gets shoved onto a meat hook. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about that sequence, and they'll talk about, yeah, you get to see the meat hook like go into her.
Nope.
No.
You don't even see it go all the way through her
No.
or come out the other side. She's hung on it, and it's like in her rib cage or something.
To be honest, you see the meat hook, and then you see her hanging there.
Yep, that's it. That's it. Like that's all this film really is. Is like horrible stuff happening to people, and you seeing most of it, but not enough to like give you a solid idea of what's happened.
Yeah, but I think it works.
It does work, and I think that's the whole like vibe of this film is to be utterly disturbing without being too like over the top and like crazy, right?
Yeah, although for 1974,
It is over the top. And
this
crazy.
was over the top.
But when
and
we
crazy.
see something like Terrifier 2 with like that whole scene in the bedroom, you know what I mean?
No, it's surprisingly light, but still gives the vibe.
But it works like on the same level, you know what I mean? Because it's so clean otherwise, the fact that we get to see that is shocking.
Yeah, honestly, it's somewhat surprising, at least I think for a modern audience, that this got an R rating.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why it got up there with like disturbing
Sure.
imagery,
For
and
sure.
tense moments.
This movie makes me super uncomfortable. I don't know if I've said that yet.
Oh, you didn't.
This movie like is so unsettling in so many ways for me. And it just like it's the vibes is what it is.
Oh,
Like,
is it just solely the vibes?
Yes, that's it. Like you see some fucked up stuff on screen and that's pretty horrible, but like just this utter sense of like despair and like no way out is just it's horrific. It's horrific. Like
Yeah. But yeah, long story short, cool what it gets away with not
Mhm.
showing and still like being as horrific as it
yeah.
is.
While we're on this topic, you mentioned that there are scenes. Was the only scene you were gonna mention with like no actual blood, the meat hook scene?
I didn't say no actual blood. There's just a lot of sequences where it's not as graphic as you think.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you a question because I don't know if you know the answer to this. When Leatherface kills one of the characters, I don't want to how spoiler.
Just go ahead.
When he kills Franklin,
Yeah.
is there blood like coming up back from the chainsaw when he's doing those swings? I thought I saw some, but I couldn't tell if that was
I
my
think
imagination making that up.
I think there's some blood. I don't know if it was flying so much as there was some blood on the chainsaw.
I thought I saw some in the air, but I was curious if like that was something that I was making up.
But even then, you don't see Franklin get eviscerated with a
No,
chainsaw.
you just see him like recoiling and like
Yeah. Everything's framed really well. I think while we're mentioning this, though, obviously, they did a great job framing some of these sequences, but like I said earlier, they weren't always safe.
true.
So there's one scene where, like, again, a chainsaw's held really close to someone who's
Mhm.
already dead. And we get to see that chainsaw turn on. There's a blade on that chainsaw.
Yeah.
And it is very close to that man's, like, head.
Mm-hmm.
Like 3 inches or so.
Which I mean, it's framed in a way to make it look like that, so it might not have actually been
no,
that close.
it was that close.
I was trying to give the movie the benefit of the doubt there, Ben.
But the one I want to mention for like accidents is at one point in the film, Sally's getting hit with a hammer,
yeah,
and the character that's holding the hammer, he's the best at killing. He keeps missing and dropping the hammer, and the hammer used in that sequence is it's a real hammer,
mm-hmm.
but he keeps dropping the hammer. So like, whatever they picked a real hammer, so it makes a thunk sound when it hits the ground. They do accidentally hit her really hard in that sequence.
Ooh,
that's on film.
That's rough.
I thought I should mention this here.
That is rough.
But yeah,
There is gore in that scene, though.
there is.
You get to see a little bit. Just a little bit.
I think there's some real blood in that sequence.
Yeah. Oh, is that real blood in that one? Oh, that's real blood.
Yeah.
That's cool.
The finger, if anyone's wondering.
Yeah.
Aside from, like, the implication stuff that I think it's well done, I think that's a really good jumping off point to how this film's shot, just in general.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of pretty sequences.
No, so, okay, not only is this film pretty, right? That's like a whole other thing. This film is decidedly, like, way prettier than it needs to be to work. They also do some of the coolest, like, foreshadowing framing shit I've ever seen in my life.
Do you have an example?
Like, there's the scene where Sally's tied up in the chair, and there's a shot from the corner of the room where you can, because we haven't really talked about it, but, like, the decor of their house where they've been captured is, like, horrific. There's, like, skeletons, there's bones, there's, like, animal hides everywhere. It's a whole thing. But it's shot from the perspective of the corner, and in the corner you can see Sally tied to the chair, and then above her is, like, a full skeleton, basically in the same pose. Like, it's just this sort of juxtaposition of like alive, someone from the past that they did this to, and like one shot, it just looks so good.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly wasn't looking for stuff like that. I was just looking at how pretty stuff is.
That's also completely fair.
I mean, a lot of the stuff really captures the sun really well
Mm-hmm.
in sequences that look really great. I mean, again, we're going to reference stuff from the end of the movie here, so sorry, but I think, at least for me, the prettiest sequence in this movie is right at the end.
Right there, like
Sally's
the very
driving away,
end.
and we get to see Leatherface doing the chainsaw dance, and the chainsaw dance is one of the coolest like sequences in cinema, at least
Yeah.
for horror, because it's just Leatherface being backdropped by the rising sun, swinging a chainsaw.
You mean
like
the setting sun?
No, it's rising.
Is it? Oh, it is rising because
Yep, like a maniac.
you're right.
It's great. But yeah, all of that's really impressive, especially for like, I believe this is at least early on in Tobe Hooper's career,
Mm.
if not one of his first films.
No, I just like
It's just well done.
for a film that is objectively like from the outset with a premise like this supposed to be like grimy and gritty and gross, which it is. I'll give it that. It is grimy and gritty. For it to have such beautiful shots on top of all of that is just a bonus. Like it just makes it better.
Yeah, and we watched it in HD in that.
Oh, it
helps.
looks so good in UHD.
But yeah, it looks shockingly well done, and it's also surprising when you think about some of the constraints from the technology they had. I mean,
Mhm.
they were shooting on 16 millimeter, I believe,
Yeah.
which isn't really the clearest. But also, from what I read, the camera they were using had some issues with lighting.
Really?
Issues is the wrong word. It needed a lot of light to like
Mm.
shoot well. So
Interesting.
there is a couple sequences that are really dark,
Yeah.
but I think everything worked out
No, I think
Really
everything
well.
worked out.
regardless.
Something we haven't really covered and something that I want to talk about because it's like it's one of those things that if a movie does it really well, it works, but if a movie doesn't do it well, it like slows it down and makes it feel sort of like awkward and weird. But this movie does a great job with it. Is like a way that this film makes you feel uncomfortable and unsettled is it holds on stuff for too long. Like tons of films do this, and I love when they do it. But it'll like be a close up of someone's face talking, and they'll stop talking, and it'll hold for just long enough
To make it seem awkward.
to make it seem awkward and uncomfortable, and then it'll cut and move on. And it does this so many times, and it's constant that every single interaction feels
Stilted?
malevolent, like
Oh.
evil. Like
That's not where I would have gone, but sure.
it's just like there's this awesome sequence at the end where they're like all having dinner, and it feels like it's so long. It literally feels like 45 minutes of just these evil people maniacally laughing as they torture this woman, essentially.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up here. Is really where they used to hold especially well is during the end of the film, during the dinner sequence, like
Yeah.
you said. But they've got Sally tied up, and, you know, they are essentially psychologically torturing her.
Mm-hmm.
And the film shows that with a lot of, like, strange jump cuts that hold really long.
They
As-
feel like psychotic, like mentally breaking, which is
Yeah.
sort of the point.
And I think it's a really interesting way to show it. They'll, like, show close-ups of her eyes or just
Mhm.
random close-ups of her screaming interspersed with, like, what she's seeing. And it really does do, at least those sequences do kind of, like, build a malevolent feel to everything.
Yeah.
At least unsettling.
And that's what I really love about this film. Like, yeah, Leatherface is cool. I like him. I like all of the like small stuff. But really where this film gets me is like this psychological breakdown of what is going on with this human being.
Oh yeah, it's also shocking. Again, if you're unfamiliar with this movie, you come in thinking it's going to be like a massacre film.
Yeah, no, it's
And
not.
It's really not. Most of the characters die like that right at the beginning.
That was something I wanted to mention is like this film is so cool because in a lot of slashers, you'll be like, "Oh, you know, we'll slowly pick off all these individuals one by one and then you'll get to the final girl, she'll do a circuit and she'll defeat the killer somehow." This film does not follow that completely. It does a lot of really cool stuff where it's like, "Oh, everyone's dead except for Sally. Here's your final girl circuit. There's still another 25 minutes of this film left. Deal with it." Like it's so good. Like I really really love how, because, you know, this is an early slasher compared to, and it really set up a lot of stuff for the genre, how subversive to the genre this film is in comparison to a lot of the things it birthed.
I mean, I don't know if you picked up on this. I didn't mention it in the intro because I thought you'd figure it out. This film basically created the final girl.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Because straight up, it's like everyone else dies besides Sally. Spoilers, guys. I'm sorry. But she's around for the last 30 minutes by herself.
Yeah. And it's all really good. I would say the last 30 minutes is probably my favorite part of this movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, the whole film's a little slow. And the last, 5 are so high octane.
It makes up for it.
I mean, the last 30 are pretty high energy, but especially those last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Kind of one of the last things I want to talk about, though, is characterization here. Because I think there's some interesting things to note. Obviously, Sally's set up as a final girl, so she builds a lot of final girl archetype stuff that we see going forward. Just thought I should mention that. Kind of willing to keep fighting, even in the worst situation. But I think we should just talk about the some of the more notable characters. We can start with Franklin.
Ah, yes.
Who, look, Franklin is written to be annoying.
Yeah.
That's how he's written. And if I remember right, very famously, the actor who plays him stayed in character while on set.
Oh, God.
So everyone hated him.
Oh, no.
But I admittedly feel really bad for him.
I actually like Franklin.
Because he very much is treated poorly.
Oh, yeah, no, he is treated poorly.
And it definitely looks like it sucks.
It definitely sucks.
I mean, if anyone who hasn't seen this movie, he's in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
But all his, I'm going to say supposed friends, I think they're more his,
sister's friends.
Treat him like, I don't know, he's more severely, handicapped than he is.
They treat him like a burden, for real.
Yeah.
And that blows. And from the perspective of, we're pushing around this guy in, the Texas sticks. This sucks. I get it. But also, you should treat him more like a person than that.
Yeah, and it really sucks because it's a trip he was invited on.
Yeah, he didn't even want to go.
And they keep leaving him.
They just abandoned his ass places.
I mean, obviously, like I said earlier, he's Sally's brother.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point of the trip was to go check on their grandfather, his grave.
Yeah.
And Sally goes and leaves him in the car.
Yep. She goes, I'll go check on him, Franklin. You stay here.
And there's just a bunch of stuff like that where he just gets left behind.
Yeah.
And he can, hear other people laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of sucks. But I wanted to mention it because I thought it was a really good performance.
No, that is another thing about this film that I really like is, there is stuff outside of just the killer killing people going on. There's this, deeper, and it's not, a huge part of the film, but it does make the parts of the movie where Leatherface isn't murdering people or there's not action, flow better and makes them actually work pretty well.
Well, there's actual characterization in a film.
Yeah, which is it's not something I expected in a slasher.
You're not used to. I mean, we remember the first Friday the 13th movie.
No, that one's fine.
That one's fine.
Some
of those characters suck.
Yeah,
but,
I was about to say, you're talking about probably 8. 8
Ooh.
is rough characters. But the fact that, we get deeper characters in this than I expected was really nice. It allows for them to set stuff up with the characters that comes back around later that I think is really fun. There's tons of really good setup and callback stuff that leads the characters to the places they're going to end up, but it feels natural and plotted out rather than forced. The whole way they end up even coming into contact with Leatherface in the first place is by pure coincidence.
Oh, yeah.
And it's pretty awesome, in my opinion.
I'm going to put this out here, and I hate to say this. It's kind of their fault they get killed.
Some of them.
So, they are in the middle of Texas.
Yeah.
In, the countryside.
Oh, yeah.
And
middle of nowhere.
They had just stopped at a gas station, and the guy at the gas station was because they wanted to go see Franklin and Sally's, grandpa's old house, which is abandoned. And they were asking for, directions, because it's, somewhere nearby. And the guy at the gas station was like, hey, you shouldn't go wandering, through the woods like that. There's people here who own property around here, and if you walk onto their property, they're just going to, shoot you without asking questions, because that's where we live in the United States. And long story short, they go visit the house, the Franklin house, I believe they call it.
Mm-hmm.
It's old and abandoned, but whatever. Apparently, Sally's family still owns it. But then they just wander off to another house.
Well,
And they are looking for gasoline. I'll give them the
well,
benefit.
also, Franklin gives them directions to like a creek.
Yeah. But
And
then
it's in that direction.
they walk away from this creek. And they
because the
walk
creek's dried up.
onto this other person's property.
Which, understandably, they shouldn't have done.
Again, looking for gas. Which is more understandable. But then they walk into this random person's house.
Yes.
And it's only then that they start to get killed. So, maybe their fault.
Not 100%, Benjamin.
Maybe their fault.
85%.
Logistically, I just want to mention that because I think one of the interesting things this film does is I read it this way, but I feel like there's an implication that if they had just they stop at this gas station to get gas first, and the guy tells them there's not going to be gas for a while. But I think there's an implication that if they just kept driving, or hell, even stayed at the gas station to get gas for like an hour or two,
Yeah.
they would have been fine.
No, yeah, for sure. They totally would have been fine. And I think that's part of, what makes that whole wraparound plot at the end work really well is, the fact that the dude at the gas station was really nice to them at first, and it doesn't feel like he wants to do what he's doing in the situation.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I think the only reason they die, and I'll mention this because we're talking about characterization. So Leatherface kills these kids.
Yeah.
In fact, he does all the killing in this movie. And I don't know if you picked up on this. Leatherface is, I think, developmentally challenged.
Mm-hmm.
He can't speak, and that's what the actor was going for. And I'm pretty sure he kills these kids because he finds people in his house and he freaks out.
Yeah.
And
no,
his
I
first
think he also
response
does
is
that.
to just kill people
Mm-hmm.
because his family's messed up, and that's what they make him do.
Yeah.
Generally, I don't know. I think all that's pretty interesting.
No, I do too. I think it's cool.
Who else do I want to mention here? The hitchhiker.
Yeah. He's cool. I like his setup as a creepy character at the beginning before we get all of the Leatherface stuff, because he feels almost like proto Leatherface in a certain way.
I mean, he's just supposed to be like this unsettling kind of character.
Yeah.
I won't note here though is Edwin Neal, the actor for the hitchhiker.
Mm-hmm.
Very notably, if I remember right, based his portrayal of the hitchhiker on his nephew who
Oh,
had schizophrenia.
interesting. That makes sense.
Obviously, stressing that his nephew wasn't violent.
Yeah,
most
yeah,
people
yeah.
aren't violent, but some of the behaviors are based on that.
No, I like the hitchhiker. I like the fact that the hitchhiker is in probably the first 15 of the film,
Mm-hmm.
and then he disappears for the next 45.
Well, it's interesting how much this film gets by without having anything happen.
Yeah, because it's a suspense vibes film in a lot of ways. So it doesn't need stuff to happen. You just have to feel the way the film wants you to feel, and as long as that happens, it works.
Yeah. And then the last person to mention is the cook.
I like the cook
old
too.
man. I
Yeah.
think he's great. He's just interesting because it's odd to watch him rationalize a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and it's cool to see the flip from the gas station to the house as well.
Yep.
I think that's a really, really good moment, at least in the film for me. I really like all of the slow setup stuff when Sally comes back to the gas station later and she's asking for help, and he's like, "I'll get help," and then it's slowly revealed. The reveal and everything that happens in this film is so satisfying to me in the best way possible, because coming in you see it from 10 miles away, right? I see it coming, I know it's going to happen. I think it's cool. But I cannot imagine watching this film for the first time with no context for anything that happens. It would blow my mind. Genuinely. It would, be crazy.
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure you only know what's going to happen because you've seen movies
Yeah,
since this one came out.
I'm generally aware of this, but watching this in 1974 on release would be fucking nuts. Which, brings it up for me. I think it's cool.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because I got one final point to make, and then we can...
Yeah, going back to some of the foreshadowing stuff, and this is just examples of stuff that I think is really interesting and cool and leads to some fun moments later. At one point in the film, we get a close up of Leatherface's mask, and he you can see his teeth through the mask, and he's licking them, and of course, they look messed up and stuff. They look the exact same as the cook's teeth, almost identical. So there's this really cool setup of you know the cook is somehow related to Leatherface before
They look
you
like
get
they've
to see
been
him.
sharpened.
Yeah. I just like there's a ton of like small stuff in this film like that I just like I adore.
I mean, it's shockingly well done. You picked up on the fact that the barbecue, right, is humans.
Oh, it's humans, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. I just didn't want to.
The cannibalism's subtle, just like the violence.
Yeah.
Or the gore, I guess. All right. Anything else?
No, what do you got?
Okay. I think the last thing I want to touch on here is, obviously, this is part of a franchise.
Oh, yeah.
If you're not familiar with that, you should be. It's huge. There's a ton of movies. There's like comic books. There's games. There's a bunch of
I heard the game
stuff.
is actually surprisingly good.
Yeah. What I want to mention, though, right here, because I think it's worth noting, is that the timeline for the film franchise, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's just the worst.
Really?
It's so all over the place. There's so many, like, dead ends and reboots and, like, what's happening here.
Really?
Yeah, it's a rough timeline. We're going to put it that way. I will say, though, that the second movie, if you haven't seen it, is definitely worth the watch and is a direct sequel to this one.
Oh, sick.
So unlike the other ones, which are not a direct sequel, the next one is.
Is it just called Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2?
Yep.
Cool.
Well, is it Texas? I think it might be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
It probably is
2.
the Texas, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. But that's a really good film. It's a different tone. It's much funnier, but direct sequel. It's also directed by Tobe Hooper.
We'll have to watch it at some point.
Yeah, it's really good. On that note, though, recommendations?
If you're a fan of like the classic slasher villains like Michael or Jason, this feels like proto Michael or Jason. Like it feels. We mentioned this at the start that like this and like Black Christmas are like the two slashers that like really started the genre. Like they're the two earliest ones, or two of the earliest ones. This feels like the Michael or the Jason hole, and Black Christmas feels like a different sort of slasher vibe.
I don't know. Black Christmas has some stuff that went on to influence Halloween.
Yeah. What I'm saying is, like, if you're into slashers as a genre and you haven't seen this film, this is a great jumping off point. Like,
yeah, I think that's fair.
It's so far before anything else like it that you can see where it establishes stuff, but also see where there's stuff in this film that they don't do in other films. You know what I mean? Where it's like, it was in this movie, it influenced it, but it was not something that other films picked up and took and used. So I think that stuff's really interesting to look at and see. If you want a film that's sort of lighter on like the blood, guts, and gore and is a slasher, this film's not very bloody. I mean, there is blood, of course, but it's not nearly as bad as a lot of other films that are coming out. Yeah, I really think that's it. I don't really know how much more I have to say.
Okay. I'm going to summarize my recommendation here as one big thing. But basically, if you're a fan of horror, or you're just kind of interested in that genre, and you kind of want to cover like some of the noteworthy films, this is it. You know, this is really high up there. This is probably one of the most famous slasher films of all time, and Leatherface is himself probably like the most famous character from this franchise. I mean, the IP is really popular. I mean, I think there's a lot of association between like hockey masks and chainsaws when you think of horror for a reason. So if you haven't seen this, or you've seen some of the later movies, I'd highly recommend you give it a chance, because later movies are bad. That new Netflix one
So I've heard.
sucks.
I've heard that.
Anyways, rate it.
I think I would be like sort of disrespectful not to give it a 5. So I'm going to give it a 5.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 too. This is not a a hard choice.
No, it's not really at all, because like I said earlier, there's tons of stuff in this movie where it's like, okay, I'm coming in with the baseline of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's going to be about a dude with a chainsaw killing people in Texas. That's like that's the level I'm coming at with a 3. It's so much more than that in a lot of ways. Like, yeah, I would say that's less than half of the film is the killing people with chainsaw part. Like, most of the film is just like,
I'd say less than a fourth.
Creepy shit that makes me uncomfortable and is like an interesting, I don't know, it's such a hard film to talk about because like it's a nothing movie, but at the same time so much is ingrained in the like vibe and the setup and sort of the ambiance of the film that while nothing is happening on screen, I am uncomfortable, and that works and pairs really well with like all of the implied violence later and all of the stuff that like Leatherface gets up to and all of the creepy awful things that we see in their house. So it really really works. And on top of all that, it's shot beautifully and has some really like amazing shots. So yeah, I think it deserves a 5 for real.
Yeah, I mean, same here. The 5 is really partially it's from the simple fact that the film's really, really well done. Like, shockingly so. You don't expect some of these shots to look as good as they do.
Yeah, man.
Especially from something that is a really small budget film from the 70s. But even if that wasn't the case, I mean, you look at this film and you go, oh my God, I can see what all of this became 50 years on. Like, there's so many things in this movie that are influences on the genre and on slasher films.
And just on the culture in general, you know?
Just hard to watch this film and not be appreciative of. So, I 5, like I said. With that being said, we're going to go to Outtakes.
Yeah. We'll see you guys in a minute. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Outtakes section for this episode of Beware the Board. I hope you're enjoying our review of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre so far. I like this film. I think it's super, super rad and very influential on the genre. But without further ado, let's get into the outtakes. This first clip is Ben and I's reaction to the way that this film opens. That goes hard.
By the way, a lot of the advertising purported this as a real film.
Really?
Real events.
That's also very cool.
Not found footage, but like based on real event stuff. But yeah, that opening's great.
That opening scrawl was pretty fucking sick. This next clip is our reaction to the first dead body that you see in the film. Ugh. Gross. I don't like this.
I don't think you're supposed to like it, Bob.
Ugh.
I know how camera flashes gross you out.
Yeah, because that's the gross part, Ben.
Just the noise, it really sets your spine a tingling. Can't handle it.
Yeah, it's totally not the disgusting corpses being shown in the flashes.
Disgusting's a strong word. I prefer melty.
They do look a little wax-like.
They look a little parboiled.
Oh!
You know, just a little bit.
These are disgusting, dude.
A little moist and rotty.
This next clip is our reaction to one of the characters making a Universal Monsters joke.
And that's an insane abandoned house, though. With all the trees, like, growing up in it.
Did you see what he just said?
No.
William just said, I think this is the birthplace of Bela Lugosi. I think that's really funny.
That is pretty funny.
This next clip is my reaction to Ben just dropping one of the scariest facts about spiders I've ever heard in my entire life. Ugh.
There's all daddy long legs.
There's so many? What the fuck?
Have you never heard about that?
No.
In areas like Texas, they'll group up into these giant balls. They just look like these black masses of shadows, and if you touch them, they'll like burst apart and like thousands of daddy long legs will stream out.
That's one of the scariest things I've ever fucking heard in my entire life.
Why? They're not spiders.
They are spiders.
No, they're not.
Why aren't they spiders?
I think they have the wrong number of legs, but they don't have a thorax. They only have one body segment. They are.
So what are they?
They're some type of other insect. I can look it up if you want. But they're not spiders. It's a common like misconception. There are those really long leg ones that we get at. You've seen them at work, right? Those are daddy long legs.
Okay.
Like there's two things called daddy long legs, but the ones most people think of are those round ones. But they're not spiders.
This next clip is Ben and I discussing the decor of Leatherface's home.
I think a lot of it's like roadkill they found and stuff. Not the human body parts, but like...
Clearly.
Assumedly, those were bought from a medical surplus.
You mean India?
Well, no, they would have originally come from India. Then they would have gone to UNITA.
Yeah.
And Toby Hooper was like, well, I do need a... for my bone couch.
For my bone couch. This next clip is our reaction to Franklin getting annihilated by a chainsaw. God, what an awful experience it would be to be Franklin out in the middle of nowhere and fucking be a show like this. This seems horrible.
Well, yeah, his sister tried to leave him, and he was like, "No, no, 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 no."
Well, because if she leaves him and something holy fuck! Rest in peace, Franklin. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's even worse to be Franklin now.
Yep. Holy shit. That was an awful, awful experience. This next clip is our reaction to someone getting hit by a car. Oh, he deserved that. That was one of the... What the fuck? That was like the worst fucking thing I've ever seen.
It looks pretty good, though, right?
Yes, bro. What? Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the outtakes. Do we have any announcements, Ben?
Not necessarily an announcement, but I forgot to tell you this stuff at the beginning of the episode
Oh my god.
when I was talking about the film. Did I mention the box office?
No.
It was $30.8 million.
God damn.
And country of origin, obviously, United States. What I didn't mention, and I'm going to say this right now because I think these are interesting, are the alternative titles.
Why did you save this for now?
I just accidentally skipped them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was my fault. Head cheese was a working title
Ooh.
because they talk about head cheese in
They do.
the movie.
It's a good scene.
If you don't know, guys, look it up. It's interesting looking. You ever had head cheese?
No, we talked about this during the movie. I haven't had it,
Oh, okay.
but I've heard it's good.
I wonder where you heard it was good. Leatherface, another working title. And then Stalking Leatherface, which was a third working title.
Head cheese is
Head
a
cheese
good
is
one.
the best, but I do think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Well, it
is
works
probably
with the
best.
opening scroll, right?
Yeah. With that being said, as far as announcements go, obviously next week is not a movie episode. That's the wrap up for the season, guys. So you can skip that, or if you want to hear like what we're doing the following season for like categories and stuff, and our thoughts in this season, go check it out. Aside from that, though, I think we're making a Mother's Day episode at some point.
We're supposed to.
Whenever Mother's Day is coming out, so there's probably going to be an episode released that day.
Yep. Mother's Day is the 12th of May.
Yeah, so you guys got a bit. Aside from that, usual spiel. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever else on the internet. If you're looking us up someplace like that, please give us like a quick review or a rating. That really helps us get shown to other people on those platforms. You can also, maybe tell your friend about us. It's kind of nice. Outside of that, though, check us out on YouTube. Not great for audio-only content, but it has a couple helpful tools that might help you like interact with us. There's a search button, which lets you search all of our videos for key terms, like say a movie name, which might be useful because we have like 150 episodes almost now.
We aren't at 150 yet.
Almost.
Almost there. We haven't hit episode 100 yet, Ben.
Okay. Besides from that,
episode number 100 of the actual show.
Oh,
We've done
yeah,
more
yeah,
than
yeah,
100 episodes.
no, we have.
We're at like 130 something.
Before Bob interrupted me, there's also a bell button that lets you get notified whenever we post a new video. So in case we surprised you with something like a holiday episode, that's a good way to find out. But I mean, the big thing for YouTube with both of us is we can see your likes and subscriptions and stuff like that, and that's really nice to see audience engagement. With that being said, though, YouTube's biggest thing is it's one of the two major places to communicate with us at. You can do that in the comment section of a specific video, or you can go over to Twitter at BewareTheBoard and go stumble your way into Bob's DMs. Maybe
Nice.
looking for some petrol.
There's no gas in my DMs, Ben. I don't store that there. I'm a responsible individual. It stays in the garage, okay? Like Ben said, check us out on Twitter at BewareTheBoard. It's where we post updates about the show, information about the show. Basically, if there's anything you want to know about the show, it goes on our Twitter. On Mondays, I post a spoiler post for that week's worth of episodes, which is a hidden movie cover that you can reveal. So you can watch the movie before we do. So whenever you listen to episodes, you don't get any spoilers, and when we're being vague about stuff, you know what we're talking about. Then on Fridays, or whatever day an episode goes live, I always post a link to the episode. So if you're missing an upload or want to know what's going up, There's always a link on our Twitter. Last thing, we do short form content for the show at Beware the Board on TikTok and in YouTube Shorts. We've been getting a lot of engagement over there recently. I know I haven't put one up in a while. I've been very, very busy. But if you like short form content and enjoy the show, check us out there at Beware the Board on TikTok and on YouTube Shorts. Benjamin, I think that's it.
All right, we'll see you guys next week or next season.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time.